Welcome back. So today we are going to take a look at TANCHJIM's origin. So this one came out more than a year ago. It's kind of not old at this point, but definitely been around for a while. So I'm not going to dive too much into the box and accessories and the cables and all that. We'll kind of jump into it. I think you've heard enough about the nozzles and they don't really change too much. The cable's okay. It's got a really nice case, but we'll kind of jump into it and we'll talk about this origin kind of in terms of where is it so relevant today kind of thing. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm the right person to talk about origin. I am a big Oxygen fan. I understand the legendary status of Oxygen and why that tuning was copied and replicated and why it's persisted for so long. So when they try to change Oxygen and charge kind of similar prices to it sort of, I don't know. I think it was a little hard for me to understand what was really going on and who was the actual intended listener type or what kind of music type was Origin going to fit better that Oxygen already didn't. So we can take a look at a graph really quickly and I kind of put it against two other recent sets. And they sort of represent maybe a more modern take on what is happening in the industry as opposed to where we came from, which is a little closer to Origin. So if you go back to Oxygen's tuning, that Harman style tuning, is kind of a mid-bass boosted Harman style tuning, that was super, super popular for a lot of years. And now we're seeing some single dynamic drivers start to deviate from the Harman tuning because evidently everyone hates Harman tuning or they just want something new. They sort of realize that tuning isn't as suitable for every genre as other tunings may. So you start looking at what Lesure did with the DX1 and sort of this flatter style bass shelf and a much reduced upper mid, lower treble, try to really tease out a mid-centric, more natural sounding vocal on a single dynamic driver that is actually a little bit less than Origin in cost, and really come up with, start to address some of the fatigue points, the 5K, the upper treble, these things that weren't as appealing to everyone who really kind of pointed in feedback on past sets. If those things weren't all that attractive, they tended to lead to fatigue or sibilance and all those things. And you kind of see DX1 kind of went down the line and addressed a lot of feedback on Harman style sets and came out with something with a driver that was very capable to pull off this tuning and a really, really nice set. And then you get another new set, SPA High End by Ear Acoustic. And they sort of addressed the other side of the market, the people who said, well, Harman style tuning was really not enough bass for the genres that I listen to. I need something that's a little bit more fun, a little bit deeper, a little bit thicker, a little bit, more rich in the vocals. That's kind of what this bass shelf does in the green. And they actually do use kind of a Harman style upper mid that's going to give you a thicker bass shelf, but still have the detail and the resolve that you're going to get on a really nice driver that high end used. And then you bring down the upper treble so you don't have those fatigue points, and you end up with a kind of a rich, thicker, more fun, but again, it's just a different take on Harman. If Harman was too lean and almost too thin here, SPA High End is sort of at the opposite end. Like this is the feedback of we're not going to go thin and lean anymore. We're going to give you as much thickness as you can handle and give you a really bassy style set, but still give you plenty of really great vocals. So, I think DX1 and High End and SPA High End are sort of two different takes on what the more modern style tuning might be on dynamic drivers. And then you get Origin, which has this bass shelf that sort of cuts the middle here. And someone would say, well, they rolled off the sub bass, and we'll kind of talk about that. But this long arc, I don't really have a problem with the long arc. This cutting right across in the middle, I think adding the mid bass boost right there, I think that was a fine move. That was going to give you really nice lower mids. So I don't really have any problems with that. This upper mid, so from where Oxygen was a little bit higher in the sub bass, so they tilted this down a little bit, but kept pretty much the same upper mid of Oxygen. And that was kind of a harder move. Like, I think they probably shouldn't lower the bass shelf here and then kept that. They should have lowered this. Origin should probably be right in the middle between SPA High End and DX1, right? Just lower it a little bit. That would be a more modern take on what a dynamic driver upper mid would be. And then you see the way this upper treble kind of hangs out there. Again, that was that's kind of a thing of the past. That was a thing that was popular for, maybe 2024. This whole idea of throwing a whole lot of artificial air out there. This little bit is even bigger than what Oxygen was. Oxygen had, a really nice upper treble level. This is even higher than that. And again, I sort of have to question what is going on there and why they did that. Why did they lower this and put, much more level out there? Who was that really aimed towards? What music was that going to work for? Who kind of is going to be enchanted by a lot of that artificial boost out there? So, as I said, normally I would gravitate to the one in the middle, kind of where you can see the red. If the red was in the middle there, that would be even better. If the red was down here, that would be even better. But in this case, I think we just have a lesson in balance in how we perceive the whole range at once, and not, we can kind of talk about bass, mids, and treble, but at the end of the day, we hear them all simultaneously, and their levels and balance really affect how you perceive their presence. And this one comes across as neutral bright. The bass arc looks right on, but the upper mids are a little bit too high for this arc. As I said, it moves the balance and fullness of the mids into lighter weight territory. The air region boost pushes it really over the top. So as I said, like this, I don't have a problem with this bass arc at all. I think that would have been fine. This level right here, just a bit too high. That is just going to make the upper mids in your vocals a little bit thinner. And that would have been fine too, right? Having a lighter weight, faster, more technical style vocal, I think that would have been fine. I think they could have pulled that off. But then they doubled down with the upper treble and they added a whole lot of air. And this really kind of adds more thinness to this, and it makes this really, really hard to hear. So the point at which someone says, well, the Origin's a little bit rolled off compared to Oxygen, it's not really. It's just that you can't hear it because they left these levels too high. And when you adjust them down, you can actually hear the shelf as it was meant to be. It's just, again, this is a weird lesson in balance, and I just don't get it. But the bass arc, again, I'll say it looks right, so what's the problem? There's just too much 3 to 5K, and there's way too much air for this style bass shelf. This turns a full bass arc into something much thinner. You really have to add 1 to 2 dB out at 50 hertz and below, and you're kind of in the right ballpark. So the mids, and again, I think the mids are exactly where DX1 got this one right. You want to reveal the mids, reveal the dynamic driver text. I mean, this is a nice dynamic driver. It is probably very, very capable, if not just as much capable as Oxygen was. They're probably both very, very nice drivers, but man, you can't really force text, kind of this forcing forward, this boost out here forcing everything forward. It never really comes across right on a dynamic driver. It just sounds kind of artificial and less natural, and that's kind of exactly what happens here. The bass shelf needs kind of an upper mid below Harmon. This whole bit right here, again, this bass shelf, this really needed to be a lot lower, probably 2 to 3 dB, a little bit lower. It's flattening the stage, and it's really dominating the lower mid. Again, this bass shelf, it's the right bass shelf. This level just doesn't work with this right there, and the whole idea is lost in this thinness, this boost, this brightness that comes across that really shouldn't. So the treble, again, this is another thing where the extra energy doesn't do any favors to anything here in the tuning. Again, this resembles really older style sets, boosting the upper treble. All the artificial air does is sound artificially noisy and makes the sub bass too hard to hear. Yeah, and stage, I'll kind of say the same thing. This whole thing was tuned by someone who doesn't hear stage. Between this and this, the stage kind of disappears into an in the head, overdriven, because you have so much upper treble there. It's actually a little bit hard to listen to, and I understand when people's impressions of it say, well, it's a nice neutral bright set. It's going to be maybe slightly bright for some people. It's not so much as too bright. It's just overdriven out here, and that dominates everything that they try to achieve over here, and it really takes it away from the natural sounding vocals and midsection that you had on a set like Oxygen. That balance was pretty much right on, and then to hear this take on it, you're like, who is this guy who tuned this thing, and what was he thinking? Because this doesn't really work for most genres. It doesn't. I don't know. I'm not sure who who listen to this set in this way with this amount out there, it's kind of difficult to listen to at any kind of volume because there's so much energy out there. But anyway, that is what I got on Origin. So I will continue to enjoy my Oxygen and save Origin for some other time. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.